Creative director for global brands such as Burberry, Gucci, Dior, Hermes, and Louis Vuitton. Now he is in Vietnam and is ready to help build one of the first luxury brands in Vietnamese fashion, as well as to change Vietnamese views about this industry. He is Tim Voegele, a creative director and designer from London, who is working on his first project in Vietnam, Giovanni Sartoria. We will meet with Tim Voegele in this week's edition of On the Mic to learn more about this Vietnamese luxury brands.
Arriving from Italy to Vietnam. In the past decade, Giovanni Group has changed Vietnamese views on world fashion, especially luxury fashion. At the end of 2017, Giovanni officially launched its new brand, Giovanni Sartoria. The brand marks an important milestone of the group, as well as a major step in Vietnam's high-end market. Giovanni Sartoria is expected to be completely processed in the country by Vietnamese craftsmen. And the one behind all these amazing ideas for one of the first luxury brands made in Vietnam is designer and fashion creative director, Tim Voegele-Downing.
First of all, thank you, Tim Voegele-Downing, for joining our show today. So Giovanni Sartoria is considered to be one of the first Vietnamese high-end fashion. And how do you expect this will change the Vietnamese fashion scene?
We've launched Giovanni Sartoria, which is our most exclusive and most high-quality line. So I think here in Vietnam, there are not many fashion magazines around. There are not many sources, apart from maybe Fashion TV or something that you can look at to try and understand fashion a little bit better. And I think Giovanni, we can be an educational source for that, where we can help the consumer understand better and better what fashion means, so that they can start making their own choices in a much more informed way. So that rather than fashion talking to them, they can have a dialogue and they can respond to what they see rather than just have to absorb it. Right now, fashion is being pushed at the consumer, right? But in the future, I think the consumer will have more of a two-way street with fashion. So right now, the market is transforming, and we want to be part of that transformation and help the consumer gain that confidence of being able to make their own really informed and personal choices.
What is the idea behind the first collection of Giovanni Sartoria? And do you plan to include any Vietnamese features?
I think the approach here is that we have to recognize how different the climate in Vietnam is to most other regions in the world. Almost all other brands that are just imported into the market are not really appropriate for this climate. Vietnam, everybody thinks this is very cold right now in winter, but I'm still very warm. So, the products that you're getting for autumn winter from Europe or from America are always over-engineered for being even warmer than you need for the market. We design our product ranges specifically to take this market and the region and the climate into account, but we're bringing also an international level of sophistication to the product.
Giovanni Sartoria is considered the highest symbol of value for Giovanni Group. It will be the first choice for politicians, executives, and leaders of top businesses. Following the announcement ceremony, Tim Voegele-Downing, with more than 20 years of experience as a creative director and consultant for global brands such as Burberry, Gucci, Dior, Hermes, Mulberry, Louis Vuitton, and Giám, immediately met with his team to discuss how to create new, impressive, high-end designs for Giovanni Sartoria. According to Tim, climate conditions are the first factor in ideas for the collection. Next, Vietnam's cultural symbols, such as famous landscapes, will complement the designs. The collection will be brought to the world market as a way to make Vietnamese luxury fashion stand out in the region and around the globe.
Apart from designing the products, you've also focused on designing the space to display the products. And can you share with us the idea behind this space?
in line with this new personality and a new character of the brand that we've designed, we now need to design the vehicles where people encounter the brand. The store that we've just launched here now, this new flagship store, is an expression of that new relationship. It's very different from where we were before, but it's still somehow familiar. So you, again, are on a journey, but at the same time you bring a lot of transformation. We have opened the front of it altogether so that we have created an inviting, open, warm atmosphere for the store. And the nuances of the colors that we're using is completely different to anything else in the region.
So you've collaborated with big global brands such as Gucci, Dior, Hermes. So what is your view on the potential of Vietnamese fashion compared to the world and in the region?
Vietnam is quite different from some of the other countries I've worked in. I've worked in Japan for over 20 years. That has a very mature and developed media landscape. In Vietnam, for example, the exposure of the customer to fashion has been very small. You don't have a great number of fashion magazines. You don't have a lot of sources where you can learn or gain confidence in how to wear things and what to wear, which brands to buy, etc. So, for example, for menswear, in Vietnam there may be 3 magazines. Right? In Japan, I can find 20 magazines just about shirts and probably 500 about menswear. Here in Vietnam, both for men and women, those choices are something that you're only just learning about. So that means that the consumer is very hesitant about new things coming into the market. We have big brands coming in right now, like Zara and H&M, that are going to spend very, very large amounts of money in marketing to create a new level of understanding of what fashion could be and how much fun you can have with it. I think rather than the media landscape, it's going to help transform the Vietnamese market over the next couple of years, where the consumer will become more sophisticated and will become more self-assured in making choices. They will become bolder in making more colorful choices. So for us, that means that we're going through a very exciting time. In order for us to be meaningful to the consumer in future, we need to understand these changes very well.
Fashion shows hosted in Vietnamese, diverse styles of local youth in the street, foreign brand in the domestic market, are all proof of a growing fashion scene in the country. However, to affirm Vietnam's position worldwide requires much more time and effort. And Giovanni Sartoria is among those taking the very first steps in shaping the future of Vietnamese fashion.
What are some of the difficulties working in Vietnamese fashion?
Vietnam is probably, let's say, the youngest market that is transforming the quickest as well. But being the youngest market means that companies like Giovanni are doing everything the first time. Right? If you're working with a luxury brand in Europe or in America, that brand tends to have been there for at least 100 years. This brings with it 2 things. One is that passion and the purity of the brand is fantastic, because it's very real. It's not something that's been passed down for generations, because you encounter everything the first time. And that means there's no routine established, and we have to design processes here that are appropriate for not just the market, but also for the way that Vietnamese people work. So, and that means that you have to very carefully design every single step of that journey in order to stay connected to the consumer so they can follow you on the journey and on the story that you're telling, but at the same time you need to surprise them with something new.
Again, thank you team so much for joining our show, and we wish you the best of luck in your future projects working with Vietnamese fashion.
A pleasure to have you. Thank you.